Texas DMV denied our plate.
He can't believe potentially offending
One individual.
is all it takes to have a message or background design rejected.
People are under the assumption that there's a constitutional right to not be offended.
Texas DMV denied our plate. He can't believe potentially offending one individual is all it takes to have a message or background design rejected. And people are under the assumption that there's a constitutional right to not be offended. Texas DMV. Texas DMV, let's listen to the original.
Texas DMV.
Texas DMV.
Texas DMV.
Texas DMV. And we'll talk about what DMV means tomorrow. Texas DMV. Texas DMV.
Texas DMV denied our plate.
Denied our plate. What's the pronunciation? Perfect pronunciation is our, but daily pronunciation, R. Denied our plate. Texas DMV denied our plate.
Texas DMV denied our plate.
He can't believe.
He can't believe. Now make sure when we say can't, we stretch it out. Make it strong. He can't believe, he can't believe potentially offending. So look at this. We got schwa. I want you to listen. I'll change this to blue. I want you to listen to that.
He can't believe potentially offending. He can't believe potentially offending.
He can't believe potentially offending, right? That's daily English. Schwa.
He can't believe potentially offending
One individual.
One individual. Lots of people missed one, but it's clear one individual.
believe potentially offending
One individual. One individual. One individual.
Is all it takes, great expression, is all it takes to have a message and her or pronunciation is clear, to have a message or background design. So a message or a background design. We got two things, so we need the or in there. Listen.
One individual.
is all it takes to have a message or background design. Message or background design. Message or background design.
Message or background design.
Message or background design.
Is this going to be, and once again, it's design, another schwa. Is it going to be rejected or rejected? Listen, you tell me.
A message or background design rejected.
Rejected. She used a rejected. Okay, now, actually, we absolutely can say but she emphasized the word rejected. That's why she used good pronunciation. Typically, we'll say rejected, but she stressed the word. She emphasized the word, so she said rejected. Listen.
Is all it takes to have a message or background design rejected.
Rejected. Very clear.
Is all it takes to have a message or background design rejected.
People are under the...
This is really tough to catch. People, listen carefully. People
are under the...
Yeah, it's really tough. It is there. Some of you got it. Most of you didn't, but it's okay. If you missed that's fine. And people are under the assumption. This is part of your EVC quiz. Great phrase. Under the assumption that, whoops. Oh my God, don't do that.
People are under the assumption that there's a constitutional right.
That there's a, get your THs. This is where TH becomes really important. It's not, no, it's that there's a, you got to use that tongue.
People are under the assumption that there's a constitutional right. People are under the assumption that there's a constitutional right.
There's a constitutional right.
People are under the assumption that there's a constitutional right to not be offended. To not be offended.
To not be offended. And a lot of people wrote, right, not to be offended. Yeah, but he doesn't say not to be offended. That's okay. We can say that. But he says a right to not be offended. To not be offended. Okay? He doesn't say not to be offended. To not be offended. Why? So here's my question. Put your answer on box. Why does he say to not instead of not to? Why? What is the purpose of this order? Okay, put your answers on box, and we'll talk about that tomorrow. Texas DMV denied our plate. Now, they're not trying to do like Hitman, Poop, or Bite Me. What they have is a design. design. So they have a special design that they want people in Texas to be able to use. He can't believe potentially offending one individual is all it takes to have a message or background design rejected. And once again, we studied that, right? Texas law. Where does it say that? Texas law says if one person... Okay, here we go. State law says he can deny a design if he thinks even one person could find it potentially objectionable. That's the same thing right here. He can't believe potentially offending one individual is all it takes to have a message or background design rejected. And he argues, and people are under the assumption that there's a constitutional right to not be offended. And he's talking about the First Amendment, and we'll talk about that in a couple minutes. So his argument is, hey, we have a constitution, laws in America that says there's free speech. There's no right to not be offended. We don't have that. Okay? I mean, we have a right to free speech. I can say whatever I want. There's no right to protect you from free speech. That's his argument. And I asked, to not be offended is what he said, to not be offended, or not to be offended. What's the difference? And 𝐷𝐈 mentioned the perfect description here, splitting the infinitive, okay, to be. To be is an infinitive. And when we split an infinitive, it's usually to stress. In this case, it adds stress to the not. So there's a constitutional right not to be offended. There's a constitutional right to not be offended. It adds a lot of stress to the not. So he's very angry. The group...
Texas DMV denied our plate.
He can't believe potentially offending
One individual.
is all it takes to have a message or background design rejected.
People are under the assumption that there's a constitutional right to not be offended. Texas DMV denied our plate.
He can't believe potentially offending
One individual.
is all it takes to have a message or background design rejected.
People are under the assumption that there's a constitutional right to not be offended.